Strange facts about Johnny Carson's last show. On May 22, 1992, America said goodbye to the man who had tucked them in for 30 years. Johnny Carson's finale episode of The Tonight Show wasn't just the end of a television program. It was the conclusion of an era that would never be replicated. Over 55 million viewers tuned in, making it one of the most watched television events in history. But behind the tears, the standing ovations, and Carson's famously understated farewell were hidden elements, last-minute changes, and behind-the-scenes dramas that the public never knew about until years later. The final show that appeared so smoothly orchestrated on television was in reality a complex web of secret decisions, emotional breakdowns, and carefully guarded plans that almost fell apart multiple times. What the cameras captured that night was only about 60% of what actually happened, revealed a former NBC executive who was present for the finale. The rest, the arguments, the surprise guests who were turned away, the footage that was deliberately destroyed afterward. That's the story that's never been fully told. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the strange, surprising, and sometimes shocking truth about Johnny Carson's legendary final broadcast, the secret history of television's most famous farewell. From the celebrities who were banned from attending to the emotional breakdown that nearly derailed the entire production. These are the hidden stories that transform how we understand a pivotal moment in American cultural history. But first, let's explore the most tightly guarded secret of all. The real reason Carson chose May 22nd as his final date. A decision tied to a personal tragedy that shaped his entire approach to his farewell broadcast. All we have is tonight and tomorrow, and I'm gone. God, number 10. The mysterious timing decision. Johnny Carson announced his retirement almost a year before his final show, giving NBC plenty of time to prepare for the television event of the decade. But the specific selection of May 22nd, 1992, as the final broadcast date puzzled network executives who had pressed for a finale during the more valuable February sweeps period when advertising rates are set. Johnny was typically very accommodating about business considerations, explained a former NBC scheduling executive, but with the final date he was completely inflexible. May 22nd was non-negotiable, and he wouldn't explain why to anyone except Fred de Cordova, the show's producer. The significance of the data remained a mystery until years after Carson's death, when his longtime friend and attorney, Henry Bushkin, revealed the heartbreaking truth. May 22nd was the birthday of Carson's son Richard, who had died in a car accident in 1991. The finale was Carson's private tribute to his son, a fact he kept secret from almost everyone involved with the show. Johnny was never one to display his emotions publicly, Bushkin explained in a later interview. Scheduling the finale. Richard's birthday was his way of marking the occasion with personal meaning while maintaining his privacy. It was characteristic of how he handled grief, acknowledging it in ways only he fully understood. This private commemoration added poignant context to Carson's famously stoic farewell. While viewers saw his emotional but composed final moments on television, they had no idea that the date itself carried such profound personal significance, a hidden layer of meaning that Carson intentionally kept between himself and his inner circle. In retrospect, knowing the date's significance helps explain why Johnny was so unusually hands-on with every detail of the final broadcast. Noted a production assistant who worked on the show. This wasn't just a career milestone for him. It was intertwined with the most painful loss of his personal life. In this, in this business there are comedians, there are comics, and once while number 9, the secret final guest that never happened. The final episode of The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson featured Robin Williams and B. Midler as the last official guests, a fact well known to television historians and fans. What few people know is that an additional surprise guest had been secretly scheduled to appear after Midler, but was ultimately cut at Carson's direct instruction just hours before broadcast. There was a planned final surprise guest that would have been historic television, revealed a former NBC page who was working that night. The staircases on both sides of the stage were kept clear, Security was doubled, and there was a separate dressing room prepared that none of the regular staff was allowed to enter. According to multiple sources who were present that night, the mystery guest was former President Ronald Reagan, who'd been secretly brought to the studio through an underground parking entrance. The plan called for Reagan to make a surprise appearance during the final segment, presenting Carson with a Presidential Medal of Freedom, an arrangement made without NBC's knowledge through private channels. The medal was real. It had been approved through official channels. But the presentation was supposed to be a complete surprise, orchestrated between Reagan's people and a couple of Carson's most trusted staff, explained a former White House aide familiar with the arrangement. The network wasn't informed because Johnny wanted genuine surprise from everyone involved. The planned appearance was scrapped approximately 3 hours before taping when Carson learned of it. According to those present, he was visibly upset that others had tried toppling a surprise element for his carefully orchestrated final show. Johnny called Fred to Cordova and said, "Get him out of here. This is not a political convention, and I'm not taking medals from anyone tonight," recalled a production assistant who overheard the conversation. He was adamant that his farewell would be on his terms, intimate, understated, and focused on his relationship with the viewers, not on ceremonial recognition. Reagan was quietly escorted from the building, and the medal was later presented to Carson privately at his home. The incident reflected Carson's famous insistence on controlling his public image and his discomfort with grandiose displays, qualities that had defined his 30-year tenure as television's most powerful star. Probably 10,000 pieces a week, Alex. Didn't talk to you about this issued at number 8. The missing footage controversy. One of the strangest aspects of Carson's final broadcast was what happened to the footage after it aired. While most iconic television moments are preserved with multiple backup copies, significant portions of the raw footage from Carson's finale were deliberately destroyed within days of broadcast. An almost unprecedented decision for such a historic television event. There were 5 cameras recording that night, which was standard for the show, explained a former NBC archivist. But what wasn't standard was what happened afterward. 3 days after the broadcast, orders came down to destroy all the raw footage except for a single edited master copy. Multiple camera angles, pre-show material, commercial break interactions, all of it was wiped. This unusual destruction was ordered directly by Carson himself through his production company, Carson Productions, which owned the rights to the program. According to those familiar with the decision, Carson was concerned about unauthorized documentaries or retrospectives using footage of him in emotionally vulnerable moments that didn't make the final broadcast. There were points during commercial breaks where Johnny was visibly emotional, a side of himself he never wanted the public to see, revealed a camera operator who worked the final show. There was one moment in particular after Midler's performance where he had to take almost 2 minutes to compose himself before continuing. He was adamant that those moments remained private. The destruction of the footage has created a strange situation where one of television's most significant moments exists only in its broadcast form, with no alternative angles or extended footage available. Even for historical purposes, NBC archivists have confirmed that the only surviving footage is the exact program as it was broadcast, plus approximately 15 minutes of Ed McMahon's unedited introduction. "It's unprecedented for a television event of this magnitude," noted a television historian. Even the moon landing has more surviving raw footage than Carson's farewell. It reflects his extraordinary power at NBC and his pathological need for control over his public image, even after he left television entirely. Number 7. The Doc Severinsen collapse. Doc Severinsen's bright outfits and brassy trumpet had been fixtures of The Tonight Show for decades. As band leader, he was part of Carson's inner circle and one of the host's closest friends off camera. What viewers of the final broadcast never knew was that Severinsen suffered a partial physical collapse hours before the broadcast that nearly prevented him from appearing at all. Doc had been up for almost 48 hours straight, rehearsing special arrangements and trying to perfect the music for Johnny's farewell, revealed a musician who played in the Tonight Show band. Around noon on the day of the final taping, he simply collapsed in the rehearsal room. A combination of exhaustion, emotion, and the enormous pressure everyone felt to make the final show perfect. NBC's medical staff evaluated Severson and strongly advised him not to perform that night, suggesting that assistant conductor Tommy Nuome take his place. According to those present, Severson refused medical advice and didn't even allow Carson to be informed of the incident. He told the doctor, "Unless I'm dead, I'm leading that band tonight." "Johnny doesn't need one more thing to worry about," recalled a production assistant who witnessed the conversation. Then he asked for a B12 shot, took a 2-hour nap in his dressing room, and somehow pulled himself together for the broadcast. Viewers who watch the final show can notice subtle signs of Severson's condition. He remains seated more than usual during the broadcast and hands off trumpet solos to other band members. However, his colorful presence and the band's performance gave no indication of the drama that had unfolded hours earlier. Doc's performance that night, considering his physical state, was one of the most remarkable displays of professionalism I've ever witnessed, said a fellow musician. He was literally running on fumes and willpower, determined not to let Johnny down on the most important night of their 30-year partnership. Severson never publicly discussed this incident, maintaining that the focus should remain on Carson's farewell rather than his own behind-the-scenes struggle. This loyalty typified the close-knit team Carson had built during his 3 decades on air, a group that prioritized protecting their leader even at personal cost. "I've been a big fan of Jay Leno since the very first time he appeared on The Tonight Show. What was it, some 8-9 years ago? I guess maybe 10 years ago." Staff number 6, the Johnny Carson-Jay Leno backstage tension. While the on-air transition from Johnny Carson to Jay Leno appeared cordial to viewers, the backstage reality during the final broadcasts was fraught with tension, awkward encounters, and carefully managed scheduling to keep the incoming and outgoing hosts separated whenever possible. There was an elaborate dance happening behind the scenes, revealed an NBC page who worked both shows during the transition period. The production team essentially created separate paths through the studio so Johnny and Jay wouldn't accidentally run into each other. Different elevators, different hallways, different green rooms. It was like running parallel universes in the same building. This careful separation stemmed from Carson's well-documented disappointment that NBC had chosen Lenore rather than David Letterman as his successor. Though Carson never publicly criticized the decision, his preference for Letterman was widely known within the industry, creating an uncomfortable dynamic during the handover. Johnny was the consummate professional on camera, but off-camera he made his feelings clear through small gestures, explained a stage manager who worked the final week. He never once mentioned Leno's name during production meetings. When discussing the future, he would only refer to the next guy or whoever follows. It was pointed but subtle, classic Carson. According to multiple sources, the tension culminated in an uncomfortable encounter just hours before the final broadcast, when Lowe tempted to visit Carson's dressing room to wish him well. Carson's longtime assistant, Helen Sanders, reportedly intercepted Leno in the hallway. Helen stopped him and said, "Johnny's preparing and doesn't want to be disturbed," recalled a production assistant who witnessed the exchange. Then she added, "Perhaps tonight isn't the best night for this conversation." Jay understood immediately and left without protest. It was awkward, but handled with the discretion that characterized everything around Carson. This behind-the-scenes tension added poignant context to Carson's decision not to make a single appearance on The Tonight Show after his retirement, despite